Pozzallo, Italy's most southern railway station. From this town you will find the ferries from and to Malta, and we arrived with one of those ferries, and we travel with very regional trains towards Palermo, the biggest city at the Italian island of Sicily. This is quite a beautiful train ride, and it's a longer distance than you might think at first, and Sicily is way more diverse than I initially thought. I'll show you all in this video. Join us from Pozzallo here in the south of Sicily, what might be the most southern station of the Italian railway system, or at least one of the most southern ones, that's for sure. If you know, just let me know in the comments. We travel to Palermo with some stops on the way, and we change trains, and we go through one of the most beautiful railway lines here in Sicily, if I may believe so. For now, let's get this video on the track, and I'll tell you everything you need to know about this in this video. And let's roll the intro. Let's take a close look on the route map for today. We start in Pozzallo, from where on we have a relatively short journey to Modica. There we hop onto another train to the railway station of Caltanissetta Xibri, if I pronounce it right. From there on we move on to a relatively fast regional train to Palermo Centrale, the main railway station of Palermo, what is also the biggest city in Sicily. We arrived in Pozzallo by ferry we took from Malta. And about a week earlier we arrived here by train we took from Ragusa and Palermo. There are trip reports about those journeys as well. We also arrived here in Sicily by train from the Netherlands. You can find all that on this channel. Pozzallo is Italy's most southern railway station. However, I wouldn't call it anything fancy or so. It's basically kind of building where there used to be more than what it is nowadays, where you find 2 platforms and 2 tracks right next to the building. There are no facilities within the building. However, right next to the railway station you will find this kind of bus stop. What's a bigger bus stop though? However, when we were here, there was a construction workers over here, so I could sneak a little bit inside their old railway station building. And honestly, there's not that much to see. They were working on some things on their grounds here. I mean, there's not even a ticket machine over here. But the online infrastructure to buy your tickets is pretty good within Italy. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on in the video. Public transportation within Pozzallo is basically non-existing, at least when we were here. So when we arrived here and we took the ferry from here to Malta, lots of taxi drivers were already waiting to pick up passengers, but they might charge relatively high prices. I mean, they do provide an okay service though, so in that sense it's nice. But it's also easy to negotiate and to lower the prices. And if you, didn't negotiate well and they won't take you for whatever reason, I also found out that it's not that long to walk to the ferry terminal. But if you didn't negotiate well, just take your loss and also really walk to there. The railway station of Pozzallo is not being served that frequent by trains, to be honest. On average you will find 6 trains per direction, so 12 trains per day. It is possible to make the journey between Pozzallo and Palermo for every day of the week. However, along the specific route that we'll be taking today, at least at the moment of recording, it's not possible to make this journey on Sundays because there are less frequent trains. Anyway, this here is the train that's coming in that will take us to Modica along the first section of the journey. And the second train will basically be the same. These are the Hitachi Blues trains. Trenitalia, the state-owned railway company of Italy, has 66 of these trains, and they can operate along electric railway lines, so on electricity, and on non-electrified railway lines where these trains will use the diesel engines. When I checked the timetable again at the moment I edited this video, what is almost half a year after we made the journey, I noticed some minor differences in the timetable and in the route. We changed trains at the railway station of Modica. However, at the moment you make the journey now along this route, you might change trains at Gela, if I pronounce it right. In general, the timetable is pretty similar, however, you will be longer on board of the first regional train. However, keep in mind that at the moment your journey is going via the railway station of Ragusa, Catania or Messina, you will not travel along this route, but in that case you will be traveling along another route basically around the island. Even though those routes are being served much more frequent by other trains. But I like this route much more. But once again, you can't make this journey on Sundays, at least not with the current timetable. Anyway, at the moment we made this journey, we needed to change trains at the railway station of Modica, what is about a half an hour from Pozzallo by train. So it's not that long. And the railway station of Modica is not that impressive either, to be honest. However, it has more facilities than the railway station of Pozzallo, but that's not difficult, because that is really basic. I hope you like this video so far. If you do so, or if it's a helpful video, so please give me a thumbs up, I really appreciate that. If you have some questions, feedback, comments, once again, even if you just want to say hello, feel free to leave a comment. And if you like to see more trip reports about more sustainable ways of transportation, the main focus for this channel is long distance and or international traveling. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't done this already. For now, let's continue with this video. And at this railway station, we had about a 1.5 hour time to change for the next train. So, obviously, we also went into the little town. However, before we do that, let me show you this railway station quickly. There is some basic information about departing trains, so an offline timetable, and there are 3 platforms over here. Although platforms, it's not that big. Basically one platform is located right next to the railway station building. Over here you find some indoor waiting areas as well, and there's also a vending machine for train tickets. I'll get back to the train ticket topic a little bit later on in the video. This here is the waiting area, and at the front of the railway station there are some spots where you can park cars. But honestly, apart from that, it's not that special over here. There's not much actually around here. So this is also gonna be a very simple and basic railway station review. There are some spots where you can park your bike and lock it next to these kind of staples. And yeah, that's basically it. What I really don't like, by the way, is that in some Italian trains, especially regional trains, you find quite a lot of gravity. I mean, my general experience is that you are still always able to find a nice spot where you can look outside though, thank goodness. Anyway, we walked quickly to the town, but there wasn't that much to explore here. However, around this railway station, if you walk a little bit up at least, you will find a bus stop, what is really nice. And the next train we had, that was the same train as I showed you already earlier on, was already waiting at the platform. So about 10 minutes before departure we could board. Before I continue, let me show you the interior of these trains. And these are once again the Hitachi Blues trains. These are regional trains that do come in one class only, and that is second or standard class, just how you want to mention it. These trains do consist of 3 or 4 carriages. If they have 3 carriages, they do provide 226 seats, and at the moment they do have 4 carriages, it will be 306 seats. CCTV is available in these trains, and there are lots of screens that will host route information. The top speed for these trains is 160 km per hour, but I noticed a top speed of around 135 km per hour along this journey. At the total front and back of the train, you can have a little sneak peek with the driver, although it's not really impressive. There's a mix of airline style seats and seats facing each other, and there are even some solo seats for the airline style seats, what I really like if I would be traveling alone. The amount of legroom is okay, it's not impressive, but it's not bad either, and I have to add up to this, I'm a pretty tall boy. All windows do have a sunscreen, and obviously these trains are air conditioned. The pattern of the seats is not super impressive, to be honest. It's quite hard actually. For a short journey it's fine, but if you make a longer journey, I don't really like this, to be honest. We spent on this day more than 3.5 hours on board of these trains, but the last train along this journey was a different train. These are modern trains. There's definitely not a shortage of power sockets. You find them between the seats, and there are also lots of USB sockets. Some seats do not have the best views from the train, as you can see over here, but at least the space is being used pretty efficient. At the vestibules you will find the litter bins, and here you can also separate your waste to recycle. This way traveling by train is even more sustainable. At the vestibules I also noticed these very tiny folding seats. I think these are the least comfortable seats on board of these trains, but it's nice as extra seats. There are some folding seats over here as well. And the luggage areas, they're hybrid. I mean, you can hang your bike over here, but they can also provide extra space for luggage. The area I showed you earlier on was having a big picture of a push car for babies. However, the toilet right next to it doesn't provide a diaper changing facility whatsoever. However, if you're traveling with young kids, these are great trains, but I'll show you that in the other toilet. I think this might be the best regional trains ever. There is even a small map of the toilet where you can see what facilities are where in the toilet. What is, I think, a little bit unnecessary, but better. Too much information is too little, I think. If you're traveling with a bike, you can even charge e-bikes on board of these trains. There are some power sockets right next to the bike areas as well. I mean, I'm not really in favor of e-bikes, but this also might have to do with the fact that I live in a very flat country, the Netherlands, where e-bikes are less needed than in hilly places like in Italy. At the moment there are no power sockets between the seats. You will find them at the side. I mean, they really thought about this very well in these trains. Priority seats have been marked pretty okay. It's not impressive, but for a European train it's pretty okay. I think when it comes to this, Europe can take a better example of Asia. Within the train you will not find special child zones like in some countries where you find even complete playrooms in trains. But in my opinion, the best part of this train, and I'm talking on behalf of a soon-to-be father, is the bigger accessible toilet. I mean, you can even put your baby in here, and there's a diaper changing facility as well. I mean, this is great, especially if you're traveling with kids, and I think we need this much more in European trains. Diaper changing should be standard. But the special kid seats are also great. And of course you also find the necessary support bars. It's an accessible toilet after all. These toilets have definitely been approved by me. Speaking of which, if you are traveling in a wheelchair, there are some extra spaces as well, as you can see over here, and they also thought about power sockets. And these trains, they are pretty low to the ground. However, the platform height in Italy is very different per railway station. It looks like it's not really standardized. So if you're traveling in a wheelchair, I think it's best to request assistance if you're traveling on board of these trains. The information on the screens on board of these trains is not only in Italian but also in English, and the same thing counts for the announcements. Everything is both in Italian and in English, and I think this is great, and this makes train traveling much easier. Are you listening, Belgium? You don't even make announcements in the other language of the same country. Just realize how it is for people visiting your country. Take an example of Italy, and not only Belgium but many other countries can take Italy as an example when it comes to this topic. I am personally from the Netherlands, if you haven't heard from my accent yet, at least if you watch this video in the original language on YouTube. And we do speak pretty good English in the Netherlands, at least that's what I think and what many people say. However, when it comes to train travel, most announcements are only in Dutch. And yes, I know traveling by train in the Netherlands is also easy if you don't speak Dutch, but you do speak English. But still, when it comes to automatic announcements, Italy is doing a great job. Anyway, about ticket fares. I purchased my tickets via Trainline, and I really like Trainline in general. In Italy this works absolutely great, and especially because you can book tickets for different railway companies on Trainline. Even though on this specific route you will only find the state-owned railway company of Italy, what is Trenitalia. You can find an affiliate link to Trainline in the description of this video as well, and if you're using that you also support this channel. Trainline is working great in many European countries and also Italy. Although it doesn't work everywhere though, but if it's not working, I will also mention it in the specific videos. Or I will make sure I don't have a Trainline link. Anyway, for within Italy, I really prefer Trainline, and you can find a link to that in the description of this video. This train also goes in the town of Ragusa, what is, when I googled afterwards, maybe one of the nicer towns along this route, and I would have definitely liked to spend some nights over here to explore this town. And over here you find also maybe one of the most impressive parts of this railway line, because there's a spiral tunnel over here as well that has been built in 1893 with the completion of this railway line, and especially when you realize when they built this. It is a masterpiece of railway engineering. It still is nowadays. For now I'll just show you some views right from the train until the railway station of Caltanissetta Xibri, from where on we changed to another train, and that was basically on the more popular railroad line between Palermo and Catania. This here is the railway station of Caltanissetta Xibri, what is not the main railway station in the city of Caltanissetta. Let me show you a map to give you some better understanding. It doesn't include all railway lines, by the way, because for example the railway line around Mount Etna, where I also made a trip report on, is not listed on this map, only if I zoom in more. Caltanissetta is located here, pretty central at the island. However, the big railroad line between the two biggest cities of Sicily, rather Catania and Palermo, is right next to the city of Caltanissetta. And this is actually why we have Caltanissetta Xibri. Of course there's some more history when it comes to that, but nowadays this is basically the railway station at the main railroad line. And speaking of that main railroad line, there are a lot of improvements going on over there between the Catania and Palermo corridor. Big parts of the railroad line will be upgraded and lots of parts of the track will be built completely new with new tunnels and way higher speeds. So the travel time between Catania and Palermo will be reduced a lot in the not too far away future. And now we're having this map anyway. We are traveling from Pozzallo, where we started our journey, and our final destination is Palermo for today. So the railway station of Caltanissetta Xibri is basically the railway station along the semi-high-speed line, well, in the future at least. Speaking of which, I think this railway station can still use some upgrades. I mean, it's an okay railway station though, don't get me wrong. But once again, when it comes to accessibility, it's quite disappointing over here. First of all, there's not really level boarding with the specific train, as you maybe just saw very briefly. And there are only stairs from and to the platform. Or maybe I just didn't look good enough, I don't know. But we had to take stairs. And this here, this is another train, this is our third train for today. That was also unfortunately covered with quite some graffiti. And the windows that were not covered with graffiti were not very clean, to be honest. These regional trains were older trains than the trains we had before. However, they're still pretty okay. Pretty often you find these trains branded with the music genre jazz. But that wasn't very clear on these specific trains. Maybe I'm wrong on this. If you know this, let me know in the comments. These trains are slightly older and have been in service since 2014. Trenitalia, the state-owned railway company of Italy, owns around 100 of these types of trains. But they're not all the same. For example, on the Leonardo Express, what is an airport train, you will only find first class, so they can charge more for the airport train. For luggage, you find the overhead luggage racks, but don't miss out on the backends between the seats for luggage. I see a lot of people not utilizing that, and that doesn't only count for this train, but for trains in general. And I'm saying this in a lot of my videos. Now let's do a quick train review. I will be shorter for this train than the previous train I had. These are definitely older trains. I mean, there are screens that will host route information, but these are LED screens and not real, well, full screens that have full route information. I mean, it's there, it's at the ceiling, it's basic, the basic information is there, so the information you need is there. There is a combination of airline style seats and seats facing each other, and the amount of legroom here is much more generous than in the previous train. But I don't really like the views from the train if the windows are like this. By the way, I gave a thumbs down for that, but if you like this video once again, please give me a thumbs up, I really appreciate that. There are some seats in the length of the train as well, and they look pretty comfy. Of course, there is a special bike and also accessible area, what can also be used for luggage, as what you can see over here. I mean, it's nice that it's there, and over here there is a dedicated luggage rack as well. However, these are still commuter trains and not long distance trains, so they're mainly meant for people who are traveling for shorter distances on board of these trains. Near the accessible area there are even some seats where you find seat belts. There are quite some power sockets on board of these trains, although most of them are a little bit hidden. I will show you all of this in a bit. These seats are softer than on board of the previous train, even though they might look less nice in a way, but if you sit on them, they're definitely not bad. Now let's move on to the toilet. On this train set there's one toilet, and this is also a bigger accessible toilet. However, if you are traveling with a baby, there's no diaper changing facility on this. That will be absolutely a great add-on for these toilets. Now let's review the seats that do face each other, which you find I think most. And power sockets are located at the side. They're really hidden, as you can see over here. However, you will find quite a lot of them. And at the side there are some small tables you can fold out to make them still pretty small. For now I show you some more views from the train as we continue our journey from Caltanissetta Xibri towards
Termini Imerese.
Yes, that one. To Palermo. After the railway station of
Termini Imerese.
We also joined the stretch of railway lines that are being used for long distance trains between the Italian mainland and Sicily. This includes sleeper trains and intercity trains. For that same reason I will also feature Palermo railway station at the end of this video, but for now just sit back, relax and enjoy the ride with me. Here our train is arriving at the railway station of Palermo Centrale, the biggest railway station in Sicily and also the biggest city of Sicily. Over here I also noticed one of the same train types as what we had, but this one looks refurbished. Actually way nicer in the green color scheme. Also reflects sustainable travel a bit more, I think. Palermo Centrale or Palermo Central Railway Station is a terminal railway station. By far most trains that do depart and arrive here are regional trains, just like our train we had that took us here on the right. Thank goodness not all windows were covered with graffiti, so we could still look outside. Most windows were not covered at all. At most platforms you do find some vending machines for some snacks and drinks as well. However, this is a bigger railway station. There are some shops over here as well. Although the number of shops is not that impressive, to be honest. From and to here you will find long distance trains as well, like I mentioned earlier on, and these are intercity and intercity notte, so night intercity or basically sleeper trains. There's not a lot of these trains do go from and to here, simply because those trains that need to go to the mainland of Italy will be put on a ferry, and that's quite a logistic process that takes quite some time, and also for the same reason there's not that much capacity. This will all improve a lot in the next 10 to 20 years, because a new bridge will be built between the mainland of Italy and Sicily. This is a railroad and a road bridge. So yeah, no surprise, Sicily will be way easier to reach by train. Apart from that, you also find quite a lot of ferries from and to Palermo. On our way out, we took a ferry from Palermo to Naples. But when we arrived in Sicily, we took a sleeper train to Catania, and half of that sleeper train was heading to Palermo. Within this railway station, I even noticed a small chapel. The countries where I saw these kind of chapels most is actually Italy, but it's still not very common in railway stations. There are some staffed ticket counters as well, and some vending machines where you can buy train tickets, but once again the infrastructure for online tickets within Italy is pretty good as well. My favorite website once again is Trainline, and you do find an affiliate link in the description of this video. And for the rest you might find everything you may expect of a railway station of this size. It's not super impressive when it comes to facilities, but there are some facilities, some places where you can grab some food, where you can wait, you name it. There's no first class lounge though. Let it be no surprise that at the front of the railway station, basically at the front and at the side, you will find connection onto very regional, so basically city public transportation. There are staffed counters where you can buy the tickets for the buses, and we could only pay in cash over here. I don't know if this will change in the not too far away future, I hope so. But it's not the most easy process to buy bus tickets, to be honest. I mean, it works eventually. Anyway, our hotel here in Palermo was closer to the ferry terminal, because we took a ferry out of here. I hope you liked this video, or this has been helpful to you. If so, once again, please give me a thumbs up on YouTube. I really appreciate that. Questions, feedback, comments, even if you just want to say hello, feel free to leave a comment. And if you'd like to see more trip reports of more sustainable ways of transportation, the main focus for this channel is long distance and or international traveling. Or then hit that subscribe button if you haven't done this already. Before we really end up this video, one last thing. Related videos can be found in the description of this video, and something else you find in the description is a link to a map, and on this map you can find all videos as well. I'm also trying to do a passenger POV YouTube channel. It's not going that well actually, at least at the moment of editing, but you can find a link to that channel as well in the description of this video. See you on the next one.